Hey there, everybody. Ben here. We've got another deck profile for you. Today we're going to be talking about a deck I personally think is going to do pretty well in this new format with Bloomlord. I do think it has a very good matchup against a lot of the meta decks, and it does not struggle at all to keep up pace with a lot of these decks right now. So what I think is particularly strong about Bloomlord in this particular meta is that we're seeing a lot of big stack decks. We're seeing decks that take a lot of time to set up, and with Bloom, I mean you're a very fast paced. You're swarming the board. You have a lot of board presence, and you don't need to take a lot to establish that board presence. So I think you can be very, very strong, very, very fast with sort of the right setup, the right plays, and the right combos. So I do think it's going to be quite strong. I personally, unfortunately, I'm not able to play into the PPG regional, which at the time of recording is probably in about 12 hours now, actually. But if I were to be playing in this weekend's regional, I think I would definitely be playing Bloomlord. I am strongly considering playing Bloomlord at Gen Con in a couple of weeks. So this is my take on it. It's still subject to change and sort of tinkering here and there, but this is the build that I have right now that I think has done pretty well in my early testing. But as always, let me know what you guys think. And without further ado, here we go. In terms of eggs, we are running 5. We're doing 1 Argomon from BT2 and 4 Cocomon from EX4. Argomon, I think, is very nice in the sense that it's a simple memory gain. Most of the times your big guys will probably be living. So when you unsuspend during your unsuspend phase, you gain a memory, which, I mean, Bloom and this deck in general being a very memory efficient deck, you don't need to worry about this too much. But at the same time, that extra memory can help with just that extra little memory for the combo play or the next step that you need to do for building your board. So I think this can be very useful. Although I think Cocomon is more useful in just draw power and consistency, right? You really need to find your pieces. You really want to see your pieces to keep stringing along those combos that this deck can do, and I think Cocomon allows you to achieve that. I used to run 4 Argo and 1 Coco, but I think with some of the combo plays that you're running with this deck and what you want to do, I think Cocomon this time around you run as a 4 of and you do Argo at a 1 of. I know a lot of times, just in general, with just 5 eggs, you do run into the trap of like you want 5 eggs, but that 5th egg just doesn't do a whole lot for your deck. I do think Argo still provides a lot of value for what you want to do. So I really don't think you miss with the 5th egg. So I think you definitely try to run 5 with how many bodies you're trying to put out as well. So those are the eggs. We're gonna be running 13 level 3s. Starting with 4 of the new BT13 Lalamon. Very important piece that we got with this new set. I think it does help your consistency as it is another searcher. You reveal your top 3 cards. You get to pick up one with Vegetation, Plant, or Fairy, and you get to pick up a Yoshino Tamer as well. So very helpful for finding your pieces, having a dig. Before this, we really only had 1 searcher, which was Palmon, and your memory boost, but now with Lalamon you effectively have more cycle power, which is huge, for a deck that likes to combo as much as Bloom does. But I think what's more important and more value is its inheritable effect, which is once per turn, when you have a Tamer in play, you are able to reduce the cost of Digivolution by 1. So a key thing to remember though about this effect is that you don't gain memory, you are reducing Digivolution costs. So you aren't able to gain memory by Digivolving, you are only able to reduce the cost at a maximum to 0. So Lalamon's inheritable in and of itself won't gain you the extra memory, it's just reducing cost. So sort of a subtle but very important phrasing detail to keep in mind when you're running this deck. But like I said, I think it really helps you turbo into your line. It really helps you search for your pieces. So it's really doing everything that this deck wants to do all in one card. So I think you definitely have to run it at a 4 of. Next, we're going to be running 4 of the EX3 Palmon. This card, like I said before, is sorry, not EX3, BT10. BT10 Palmon. This card is your previously was your only searcher for the deck. You reveal top 4. You do get to pick up a plant, vegetation, and a fairy. So you potentially have 2 hits, and with a lot of the new fairy archetypes that you're seeing in this deck, you're getting a lot more pieces, and a lot more times now you're going to be getting 2 hits off of Palmon as opposed to just maybe occasional 2 hits, but mainly just 1 hit. So I think your ability to get a lot of value off of Palmon went up a lot with this set. So these are your 2 searchers, 2 consistency cards. We're running 2 of your EX3 Pomumon. So Pomumon is important, I think, in terms of if you want to be a little bit more of a board control presence. Basically, what happens with this card is that if you hard play it and then suspend it via effect, you get to suspend one of your opponent's Digimon, which can be very helpful for what this deck wants to do in terms of suspending and causing things to be sort of suspended for the remainder of the turn, or just bottom decked because they're suspended. So I think Pomu can be potentially a very good control piece. Like I said, with this meta being more of a single stack, 1 Digimon sort of meta, this may or may not be as prominently useful. So I did cut it down to 2. I used to run it at a 4 of, but I'm running it at 2 now because I wanted to slot this in and make room for it. This is your BT9 Pomumon. Its effect is all turns. Players can't play Digimon by effect. So sort of the big deck that this blocks is Royal Knights, right? You're just hard blocking whatever they want to do with this card. Obviously, if they remove it, they can get around it, but they sort of have to commit the resources to removing this or take that extra turn to remove it, which can be annoying for them. But do keep in mind, this also will affect you. So if you do play out this Pomumon, you aren't able to play out by effects either. So it is something to keep in mind, right? Because you are not only just blocking your opponent, you're also potentially blocking plays for yourself. So, I think, again, you run it at a 2 of because it is situational. A potential sort of fear I had with running just 2 of each was that will I see it enough to actually get get the effect I want to see from these 2 cards. I think with the draw power that you have with this deck and the search, you'll definitely see your pieces at some point. I mean, you're still going to brick. That's inevitable with most card games, right? But I think with the amount of search and the amount of draw power you have, you'll definitely see the pieces and be able to make a judgment call as to how you want to combo it out. That's why I eventually also, like I said, moved to 4 of the Kokomon as opposed to 4 of the Argomon, simply because this lets you dig deeper and look for your pieces. And then the last level 3 we're playing is Mushroommon. I threw it in there just because it is a cheap body to throw it on board, It's 2 to play. It is playable by a lot of your level 4 effects, but I think, like I said, mainly just a cheap body to throw out there where, if you're still able to keep turn, it is a potential sort of body to use with a suspending effect or a gain memory effect that I think can be helpful at times. So I think it's a cheap play. Again, very situational, but sort of a resource tool you can use in case you need it. So those are our level 3s. Like I said, 13 of them. Next for our level 4s, we're going to start off with 4 of the BT13 Sunflowmon. I think, again, another very key piece that this deck got with the new set. Main effect is by suspending it, you can Digivolve into a card with Fairy in its type for a reduced cost of 2, which can be very good if you have your Lilamon spoiler going into it. And if you can imagine, with Lalamon's inheritable effect and a potential Tamer in play, you're essentially going into a level 5 for free, right? Because if you have Lala over here, remember, where you have the inheritable of, if you have a Tamer in play, reduce cost by 1, this reduces cost by 2, your level 5s will more often than not be a cost 3 to Digivolve. So you could potentially go into your level 5 Fairy for free. Its inheritable is the same as Lalamon as well. So if you have a Tamer in play, reduce the cost to Digivolve by 1, which again, it's just straight gas for your deck and allows you to get into your big piece as soon as possible. Which, like I said, with this meta, with this tempo sort of deck, you really want to be able to do. So I think Sunflow is very good in terms of that resource. Next, we're going to be playing 4 of your BT10 Sunflowmon. So this one is a 1 Digivolving. You can suspend it to play out 1 Digimon with a DP of 3k or less and has to have Vegetation Plant or Fairy. So you do have a lot of targets with Sunflow. More often than not, I will be going into Sunflow on something I have already played by another effect, potentially. And I'll show you a combo later on in this video, but you're able to play out another level 3, most likely. You can play out your 2 Searchers if you're looking for pieces. You can play out a Pomu to kind of toolbox your way into what you need to do. So there are a lot of options you can do with the Sunflowmon's effect, and essentially being able to just get another body on board to help with that board presence, I mean, is huge, right? So I think Sunflow you run out of 4 of. And we've got 2 other level 4s to play, which is your BT10 Red Vegiemon. Similar to Mushroomon, I think really just a cheap body to play, right? It's a 3 play cost. You can play it off of Sunflowmon's effect. So if you're not seeing a 3 that's useful, but you have a level 5 in hand, you can go ahead and play this out and then go into a level 5 off of, your next stack. So definitely gives you a little bit more flexibility. It is also a cheap Evo. It only Digivolves for 1, so you're not seeing your 2 Sunflowmons and you just want to keep building. This helps you do this as quickly and efficiently as possible. So it's an efficiency card, right? It's not a very big, strong card, but it helps you keep your plays going, keep your combos going, and kind of helps you be a little bit more flexible with what you want to do. So I think running this at a 2 of is helpful. So that's it for our level 4s. We're running 10 of those. Next, we'll get into our level 5. So we're running 3 of the new BT13 Lilamon. I think a very nice piece for this deck. When Digivolving, you get to play a Yoshino for free, which has value with it, if you can imagine, with sort of like the combo play that we talked about with Sunflowmon and Lalamon. If you're able to go into Lila for free, not only have you gone into a level 5 essentially for no cost, you have now also played out a Tamer, which will set your memory. So I think Lila is a very good card, not to mention that its inheritable is also, if you have a if your opponent has a suspended Digimon in play, you gain security check +1, which is a very good aggro tool and helps kind of keep the pace going and help push your opponent to feel that pressure, from your aggression and your board, So I think a very good card here. And then we're going to be running 3 of the BT10 Agitarmon. Again, a staple from the old Bloomlord build. Main phase by suspending this Digimon, or one of your green Digimon. Doesn't have to be Agitar, but by suspending any one of your Digimon that's green on the field, you can basically play out a 3k DP or less, plant, fairy, or vegetation, similar to what Sunflowmon's Digivolving effect was going to be, but Agitar is able to do that at start of main phase, or anytime during your turn, which is, I think, again, helpful for stringing your combos along. More often than not, me personally, if I'm playing, I'm typically going into Agitar and then raising him out, just because he is typically the start of my combo, if I'm able to go into it. So ideally, like I said, he's in the back, then I suspend him to play out one of its possibilities that, like I said, we'll go over a combo later on in the video, but I think very important card. You'd really want to be able to see him if you can, and like I said, if you are seeing him, typically for me, he's at least in raising. Then we're going to be running 2 of the BT10 Cherrymon. running him mainly for the Digisorption. For those who don't know, you can reduce the cost of Digivolution by 2, so making him essentially a 1 cost to Digivolve if you're able to spend one of your Digimon. Doesn't have to be this one, you can suspend another one, but during your opponent's turn, if this is suspended, you can redirect their attacks to one of your suspended Digimon. So sort of a pseudo blocker effect in that regard. Like I said, I'm mainly running him for the Digisorption because that helps my efficiency and helps me ramp into my boss monster. But that pseudo blocker effect can be helpful, particularly if you've got like a low DP body on your opponent's side of the field that potentially could be swinging in for a check. You can just redirect it, right? And it is 7k, so it's not an insignificant number there. So it can come up, but I mainly use it for the Digisorption effect. And then last level 5 we're running is the BT3 Blossomon. It's limited to 1 of, mainly because it's Digisorption -3. So essentially you can make this a free Digivolution. If you had 4 of these, I think you run it at a 4 of, but you can only run 1. So you definitely run the 1 of. Again, it's a turbo, gets you into your boss monster as quickly as possible, and is sort of like a built-in HPD in terms of its mechanics. So I think Digisorption in general is a very underrated mechanic, and I really do enjoy it the more I get to use it. So I think you run 1 of Blossom, 2 of Cherry, just for that sort of turbo effect right there. And that's it for our level 5s. Now moving on to our level 6s, we are running 3 of your Bloomlord from BT10. Very, very good card for what this deck wants to do. I think it gives this deck a lot of gas, a lot of aggression. So when you Digivolve, you can suspend one of your Digimon. Then you gain 1 memory for each suspended Digimon with Vegetation, Plant, or Fairy, which is pretty much all of your Digimon in this deck. So if you gain more than 2 memory with that effect, meaning that you have more than 2 suspended Digimon in play, you will unsuspend this Digimon. Okay, which, if you can imagine with your Agitar or your Lila even, most of the times when you Digivolve, that will be suspended. So you really want to be able to build a board, go into Bloom, gain the memory back, which more often than not will keep turn, or now with Lilamons and Sunflowmons inheritable from BT13, you may even gain memory depending on what your board state looks like. And now you have a boss monster that is unsuspended. You can choose to swing for aggression. If you want to keep them on board and not get swung through, you can keep them unsuspended, but you have possibilities there. And then during your turn, for every 2 suspended Digimon you have in play, you gain check +1 and +2 KDP. So more often than not, Bloom is swinging in for 14k, 2 checks. Sometimes you can get them up to 16k, 3 checks. And if you have a Lilamon underneath, you could even get 3 to 4 checks off of Bloomlord itself too. So very strong aggro card. You do want to be able to see this if you can. I'm running it at a 3 of just to fit in the Rosemont package, spoiler alert, because that also gives you a lot of aggression and a lot of board control, which will be important with this meta. One downside to Bloom is that he can be a glass cannon. He can get very big, very strong. You use up your resources, set him up, and then he hits a Chaos Degrade, or he hits a Burst Mode that's at 15 KDP and he's dead. So I think particularly in this meta when you have a lot of potentially high DP Digimon insecurity, or option cards are becoming a little bit more prevalent now because of that reason, Bloom can be a bit scary to swing with if you're not reading your opponent's board state correctly. So I'm running him at 3. Next we are running 2 Hydramon from EX3. I think Hydra is still a very good card. It is a very good control-y card, oppressive card. If you don't see sort of your aggression pieces, I think going into a Hydra is completely a good play. When Digivolving, you can suspend one of your opponent's Digimon, which can be helpful. And then all turns, if one of your opponent's Digimon were to be suspended, for every other, so not including itself, but every other Digimon that you have that's suspended and has vegetation or plant and traits, you gain a memory back. So again, you can reduce the Digivolution cost with this, not just with your Tamer and your Inheritable, but also by its Digivolving effect, which procs as all turns effect. And then at the end of your turn, if you have more than 2 suspended Digimon, you can bottom deck one of your opponent's suspended Digimon. So depending on what sort of combo plays you want, you are able to remove a good amount of cards from your opponent's board to the bottom of their deck. And again, our big players this meta are decks like Mirage Gao, decks like Shine Gray, Belfi, who don't really have protection, right? Yes, we'll see the occasional Black War Gray, not occasional, but probably a decent amount of Black War Gray, but your X antibody stacks aren't as prevalent anymore, at least in this early meta. So Hydra can be a very good option to just get rid of things, right? I think you do have to anticipate to a degree where you almost have to say next turn you're anticipating them to go into their big Shine play or their Mirage play. You try to bottom deck their level 5 as soon as possible, or their level 4 even as soon as possible, just so that they have to restart. So Hydra can be a very good option. If I weren't running the Rosemont package, I probably would bump Bloom up to 4 and bump Hydra up to, like, say, 3, for example. But I just thought that the Rosemont package was just too good for what this meta is shaping up to be. Hence, we're playing 2 of the BT13 Rosemont. So when Digivolving, what you can do with this card is you can suspend one of your opponent's Digimon or Tamers. And then that will proc the all turns effect, similar to Hydra, where if one of their Digimon or their Tamers is suspended, then you can suspend something else. Which, if you can imagine, can be quite suffocating with the level 7 that you're going to be running, which is Burst Mode. I'm running 3 of them. Basically, when you Digivolve, you can burst Digivolve for free on top of Rosemont if you can return a Yoshino to hand. But even if you don't, right, you pay the full 5. When Digivolving, you can suspend another Tamer or Digimon, and then they don't unsuspend for the next turn. It's a perma suspend, meaning that Rosemont goes away, that suspend effect is still in place, right? They can't unsuspend if they get rid of it or whatnot. So Quartz, I think, struggled with that to a degree, right? Because if they were able to get rid of Quartz, things would unsuspend. But with Rosemont, you get rid of Rosemont, everything is still suspended regardless because it's a blanket perma suspend. And then when attacking, for every 2 suspended Digimon or Tamer that your opponent has in play, you trash the top of their security card. So like I said, more often than not, if you're facing a big stack board, you won't be trashing a lot, but you'll be suspending their entire resource field. If you are playing against a wide board, you could potentially, like I said, suspend 1, 2, 3. If you've used Pomu or whatever to suspend another one, you could be trashing multiple cards off for security and when swinging with Rosemont. The question that some people may ask is, why not Quartz? Why not run the Quartz? I think Quartz is a good card. It's a very good card. I think it is meta dependent and matchup dependent. If we start to see more hunters in this meta, which may very well happen, I think Quartz is maybe like a one of. You can take away one burst mode and run a Quartz and do like a 2-1 split. Or even do like a 2-1 split, or just take the Rosemonts out, period, and divvy it up that way. But if, like I said, if you're running into Blue Flare hunters more so at your local meta, or the meta eventually shapes up to be more prominent for those wide board high Tamer decks, Quartzmon I think will be a good call. But I think right now, particularly early meta, when everybody's sort of high on Shine Gray, Mirage Gao, and for good reason, I think Burst Mode has a better utility and a better play going into it. So that's why I chose to run 3 of the Burst Mode and just cut Quartz out completely from my deck. But otherwise, I would consider for sure running at least 1 Quartz, if not 2. Another thing you may notice is that you're kind of heavy on your top end. You have a total of 10 level 6 and above Digimon, which may seem a bit excessive, but I think with how quickly you are able to turbo and how consistent you can be with the amount of times you're drawing and searching and whatnot, you really don't want to be stuck in a situation where you've set everything up and you're like, I'm just missing my level 6, or I'm just missing that last piece. So I tried to maximize the potential of seeing what I want to see as best I can, while still maintaining a little bit of that toolboxy feel, because I still think burst mode synergizes relatively well with Bloom and Hydra if you need to do it that way. Obviously, it's more ideal to do burst mode off of Rosemont, but you can still burst mode on top of Bloom, burst mode on top of Hydra, depending on the situation. But I do think you run enough of each where you're like, depending on the scenario, you can kind of choose which way you want to go. And I like that flexibility, and I like that ability to kind of have a more dynamic feel to what I want to do as like an ultimate game plan. So that'll be it for all our Digimon. Tamers are going to be pretty straightforward. We're only running 2 Tamers in this deck. We're running 2 of the new BT13 Yoshino. It is a memory setter, which can be very huge for this deck. To just be set at 3 is just huge value because you can do so much with just 3 memory. And then during your turn, when one of your Digimon would Digivolve into another one with, say, Vegetation, Plant, or Fairy, you can go ahead and suspend her to gain a memory. So, again, a lot of turbo potential, a lot of efficiency in terms of manipulating your memory to get into the stack that you want to get into, which, I mean, as if Bloom didn't need enough memory, right? It's really insane how much you can do with so little memory with this deck and just create a board state that is quite intimidating, and at times very frustrating to play against, but very, very good it feels very good if you're playing it. So only 2 Tamers, 2 Yoshino. I think pretty straightforward there. In terms of options, we're running 4 green memory boost because you really want to find your pieces. I think, yes, you're running a lot of Digimon. Yes, you're running a lot of searchers and a lot of ways to find the pieces you need, but there will be times where you brick, and if you brick and you can't get your combos off, bad news bears, right? So I think 4 green memory boost is still a good idea for this deck. To be fair and to be devil's advocate, you have now a lot of pieces that help with your memory efficiency and also help with search. So if you are looking to adjust ratios a bit, I'd say you could consider going down to just 3 and adjusting for either another piece or another option card, depending on what you want to do. But I think, for me, I like the 4 of. Next option we're playing is one of Samadhi Santi. I think a good card in the sense that sometimes you do want to be a little bit aggressive about suspending your opponent's Tamers, mainly for the Shine Gray matchup, right? Like, again, if you don't have the level 6 or the high end to pull off the control plays you want to do, sometimes just playing a Samadhi Santi to suspend one of their Marcuses really stunts their play, right? If you stun one of their BT12 Marcuses, like, that free Digivolution play is no longer available. Obviously, they have another one on board that's sort of a moot point. But if they only have got one on board and you go ahead and just Samadhi Santi it really restricts what they can do, right? And unless they have the memory to just hard play one, even then it doesn't get the rush and the ability to, well, I mean, it can get rushed, but again, it would have to be, they'd have to hard play it, which can be rough for them and can throw their plays off. So I do think Samadhi as a one of is helpful. You could argue, like I said, to run maybe 2 of. I think that's fair as well. The last option we're running is HPD. Just such a good card for this deck. It's so efficient because it's free, right? And you are spewing out a ton of bodies, so the targets to use this effect will be pretty available. For those who don't know, if you play this card, the next time you choose to Digivolve one of your green Digimon, by suspending one of your active Digimon on the field, or active green Digimon on the field, you can reduce the Digivolution cost by 5. Essentially going into most Digimon for free at this point. It's a free-to-play. It's limited for a reason. You'd have to play this card in this deck. There's just no way around it. And I'd say honestly at this point, just max rared it. It's pretty. It's nice. It's a great card. You need it for the deck. So that is the deck profile. So like I said, I think still open to adjustments on my end for sure as I test out a little bit more. But I do think that from the way I like to play this deck and the way I like to kind of set up my plays, this is what I would like to do. I'm going to try to set up a combo here just to show you like what you can do with this deck and how powerful it can be. All right. So, sort of like I alluded to before, just say you have a Yoshino in play. Let's have a Palmon, actually, just in raising. Let's just say you went into... You know what? Actually, strike it. Let's do Lalamon, and then we'll do the new Sunflowmon on top. And you have an Agitar in raising. Okay. You have a Yoshino in play, and it's your turn. You start your memory at 3 because of Yoshino's effect. You go ahead and promote, right? You use Agitar's effect to suspend itself, which will then allow you to play out a level DP of 3k or less, which say you play out Palmon, you do your search, you pick up whatever pieces you hit, and you're still at 3. Then you're able to go into Sunflow here for 2. I would then suspend Sunflow and suspend Yoshino. Yoshino's effect gains me a memory. Sunflowmon lets me play out another Digimon. Say, just play out Pomu, okay? Because it is 3k DP or less, has vegetation and traits. So you go ahead and do that. And then, if you want to go ahead and do this play over here, you can go into Bloom. Technically, for a cost of 4, but since you have a Tamer in play now, you can reduce the cost of Digivolution by now 2 because of Sunflow and Lala, making it a 2-cost Digivolution. You can suspend Pomumon, which gains you a memory from Agitarmon. You have 1, 2, 3 Digimon that are suspended with vegetation and trait. Gain 3 memory off of Bloom's effect. Go ahead and restand here. And now you are a 14k 2-check body. You can choose to swing if you like. So if you want to go ahead swing, you swing for your 2 checks. If it lives, great. If it doesn't, whatever. You can then play out a Mushroomon for 2. Like I said, cheap to play, still keeps your turn. I think it's very useful. You can then HPD to suspend Mushroomon to go into, say, Lilamon here. Now for free, if you have a Yoshino, you go ahead and play a Yoshino. But otherwise, you know, it is what it is. If you have the Kokomon effect, you can go ahead and draw off of your Kokomon effect here. And then you kind of have, you know, a wide gambit of stuff you can do, right? If you want to go into Rosemont, you can do that. You can go into Rosemont and suspend, knowing that you probably have 2 memories, so you would pass turn to 1. So I don't know if that would be the ideal play, but if you had a boost, you could go into Rosemont, keep turn, suspend something to unsuspend, suspend something else because you suspended something, and then go into burst mode, right? Bring back the Yoshino, suspend something else again, and then go ahead, swing, potentially tracing 1 card, swinging for another check because of Lila. So then you've effectively OTK'd them that turn. If you don't have these 2 and you are stuck here, you could potentially just go into Hydra for a cost of 5, right? Gain 2, gain 3, because you have 3. Keep turn, and you still have things to do, right? So you have now essentially, from a level 5 and raising and absolutely nothing else, have been able to put out 2 level 6s, 2 bodies on the board, have suspended either a Tamer or a Digimon, done multiple checks, and your opponent may end up being choked to 1, depending on your play and whatnot. And even if they do get set to 3, I mean, they've got to deal with all this, or else you have lethal next turn. That is, if you're talking about memory efficiency, that is memory efficiency to its finest, right? I mean, like, this was 1 turn, right? And you're able to do all that. Granted, you know, you kind of had a scripted line, right? But this is the potential of this deck. And if you're not able to respond to this, and if you're bricking or whatnot, which Shine Gray and Mirage Gray can do, I mean, you are in control of this situation until proven otherwise, right? So, you know, that is my take on this deck. I think it's an absolutely fun deck to play. A lot of combo plays that you can pull off, a lot of tempo, aggression, and control all wrapped into one with this deck. And just a lot of options that you can do, right? A lot of different ways you can play the deck depending on the scenario. So I think it's very adaptable. It's going to be very strong. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of this, not just in regionals in the next couple of weeks, but it is also viable in Ulti-Cup format. So I think be prepared to see this deck. Let me know what you guys think of my deck. Let me know what you think of the profile. I'm open to hear any sort of suggestions and changes that you guys might want to see. And thanks for watching.